Chest up, shoulders back. This is Revival Fitness. And as you can see, we're back on the bike. Which means cutting season is upon us. And this is not just a cut, because I am competing again.
Oh shit, here we go again.
I have told you guys before, I don't know if I want to do bodybuilding seriously long term. But that said, I can't go out like I did last time. I'm not going to let that be the only show I have under my belt. Bodybuilding is very glamorized on social media. Yes, I mean competing. That's what bodybuilding is. Not just lifting weights for the sake of wanting bigger muscles. Lifting seriously on even a recreational level requires a lot of commitment and attention to detail, focus, all that stuff. You talk about actual bodybuilding, it takes it to a whole nother level. You could say I was overzealous. I probably expected too much, primarily for the effort that I put into it, and I definitely put a lot of work in. But it was far from polished, and I did not work with anybody prepping. I had no coaching. Nobody wrote my meal plan. Nobody worked on my posing. Nobody wrote my training. I did it all through trial and error, and I made a lot of errors. So what all went wrong? Well, basically everything. I would say besides the training. My training is pretty much always on point, and there's always some tweaks that you can make, but I wasn't really missing workouts. I wasn't injured. Nothing like that, at least not on any serious level. Now, when it comes to the posing, I definitely neglected that. I kind of did the thing where I would practice in the mirror for like 5 minutes at a time every few days, but I had no real schedule, and I was just practicing the posing now. I'll tell you what, man. Bodybuilding posing is freaking hard. So you guys may have seen some recent pictures I've been putting up. I am 5'10". I get asked that all the time. So on the internet, I'm 6'1". Last I checked, I was just over 180 pounds. And I started cutting just after Thanksgiving. Although I was not really formally in the prep diet up until, I think, just before New Year's. I had a lot of leeway though. I was kind of eating some treats, just enjoying some things I wanted before going into the cut. So I've basically been on this diet for just over 2 weeks now, and I am noticeably leaner at this point, getting into this, than I was going into my previous show, where I bulked pretty much up to, or maybe even slightly past, 20% body fat, and then I just immediately cut from there. And in hindsight, I would have done better if I had given myself at least an extra month to cut down, but given the myriad of errors that I made, I don't think it would have ultimately made a difference. But I was just over 190 pounds at the end of my last bulk. This time I got up to just over 200, so definitely made some gains. A lot of you guys have commented too that they're pretty noticeable. So this right here was taken in the morning in my kitchen. Not the craziest lighting you've ever seen, obviously, but no food, no pump. This is just right out of bed. I'm going to be aiming for a show this summer. Maybe late May, early June, something like that. Maybe a bit later. We'll see how the cards fall. So that's something I learned the hard way too. When I started cutting for my first show, I didn't have visible abs. I was just right at the end of the bulk and then wham, did a 180 and then started cutting. So the posing absolutely needed more work. Given that it was an amateur show, that's typically not going to make or break you. But what did make or break me was the condition, because I just didn't get lean enough. And I guess it's fitting. I am the bulk king. Live by the sword, die by the sword. I failed. There's no other way to put it. I had a few things go wrong with the diet. I was changing my food up far too much. And whenever you are, again, not just a normal cut, because that was the attitude I had going into it, because I've gotten just generally like beach lean, bro lean before, like low teens body fat, and I was like, oh, well, that wasn't that hard. I ended up buying an entire new refrigerator whenever I was in my old apartment, because I had a mini fridge for a lot of the time that I lived there, and I started buying so much new food to try out and eat during the prep, I had to get an entirely different refrigerator to fit all of this food. It was a complete mess. And I obviously know how to count macros and all that stuff, but when you are switching your food sources to that degree, when you're cutting that significantly, I would say without question it's going to throw anybody off. So I obviously was getting leaner, but it became apparent toward the last probably month and a half. I did some progress pictures and like a video, and I realized like, okay, this is probably not going to happen. And then toward the end as well, I started pushing the cardio much harder. I also didn't have an extremely regimented cardio routine. You see like all these things going wrong, it's not a surprise why it turned out the way it did, but that's something that's very common. Even if you're just doing a general cut and you cheat on the diet too much, people tend to overdo the cardio as a compensation. Then you're going to burn yourself out doing a bunch of cardio, then you're going to up your appetite, that's going to prompt you to eat more. But given all of those food changes and all of the experimenting I was doing in a very short time frame, that really messed with my appetite. And getting closer to the end, I was overtly just cheating on the diet. I was ordering Uber Eats. I don't even want to say how much, I don't even fully remember, because a lot of it was a blur. And the rationalization that I made for myself was, oh well, you know, it's your first show. I don't know if I care about bodybuilding that much anyway. You know, does it really matter? What is the point? Just have the food. I was going through all these sort of mental gymnastics. And at the same time as well, I was planning a major move out of LA, which, pro tip by the way, just as a rule of thumb, I would try not to do a major cross-state move or other major life events while you are about to be stepping on stage. I mean, there's a lot of stories about how people basically lose their minds when they're getting close to the stage, just given how hungry you are, how exhausted you are, all that other stuff too. Could have avoided that, but I knew at the time I had to get out of LA. And I will say I made the right decision, because every time I open up the news, I see some crazy new policy that they put in, and I'm like, oh, that's why I left. And I learned a lot about my own eating style and preferences because of that, which I think that is the biggest positive that came out of the entire thing, besides from just getting the experience on the stage and getting more comfortable. Because everybody who's a complete amateur on stage looks like a baby deer. You're just confused, eyes wide open, just awkwardly turning and stuff. It's just part of the process. But I learned a lot about my own food craving triggers, and there's obviously a big willpower component to all of this as well, but realistically, willpower is only going to take you so far. I also will do a coming video on the diet that I'm following now. Spoiler alert, you're not going to like it. And one thing to keep in mind, guys, if you want to do a show, I signed up for the show that was in July. I think it was February, or even January of that same year. So I just signed up and had that date on the calendar. You don't have to do that. There's no need to rush into a given show. Even if you have your sights set on it, the show's going to be there whether you sign up really early or really late. Unless there's unique circumstances to where they run out of slots, and I don't think they usually do. But my hunger was just out of control, and I lost control. I just couldn't stop myself. I've never had a legitimate binge eating problem. Those of you that have, or even just episodes of it, can probably relate to this. But it's almost like you leave your body, where like you just open the fridge, you blink your eye, 10 minutes has passed, and there's just like wrappers and dishes in the sink, and you're sitting there like, did I even eat that? Like, you can't even process that you did. That's the craziest thing about whether it's junk food or fast food, whatever you want to be eating, right? Even just general snacks. It's like you just lose your mind for a very brief period. You don't even get to enjoy the food that you're eating. You know, you get that quick little high whenever it hits your taste buds. Whether you ate a ton of crappy food and you feel sick, or whether you just overate, cheated on your diet, and you realize like, okay, that didn't really serve me any benefit. You feel like shit after, but you couldn't stop yourself. So it's this weird loop, and I fell into that, to where it's like, alright, cheated on the diet, screw it, this isn't going well anyway, cheat again, why not, right? And then you just go over and over in that same cycle. And speaking of cycle, I want to be totally transparent with you guys. I didn't know how to really say this, but I am on steroids, corticosteroids. Because as I've talked about before, my skin tends to get pretty bad whenever I am eating just a lot of food in general. It seems like primarily carbs are what do it for me. I think a good amount of dairy is one of the culprits. Even though on the previous bulk I just finished, I didn't have a ton of dairy there toward the end, and it still was happening. But I will start to get red psoriasis patches. There are some stragglers left on my body now, but I am working on getting rid of those too. But as I sat there dipping my string cheese into Bertolli vodka pasta sauce and realizing, this isn't going very well, at the same time, about 2 months out, maybe a bit less, I got involved with a toxic woman. And that just adds a whole new layer of greatness, doesn't it? I was in basically monk mode all of 2022 leading up to the show. I was just hellbent on growing this channel. Total monk, Sigma grind set, right? I was just all in for months and months and months. I didn't date any women. I wasn't going out at all, nothing. I meet this girl, And I was going to go and do a whole thing about what it was like. I probably shouldn't do that. It's not worth even bringing up. But oh man, she was a mess. Plenty of red flags. And I sat there and started twirling the flags. No matter how apparent the red flags got, I was like, oh, but, I'm having fun, right? Typical think with your little head, not with your big head type of thing. Every guy's been there. Or if you guys are younger and you haven't, you will be at some point. You'll learn the hard way, because that's how guys learn. But my god, that added just a whole nother layer of shit onto the shitstorm. I have turned a new leaf in terms of that, so I've made a lot of adjustments. There will be some training footage, workout vlogs, eating, all that other stuff will be coming up, and I'll keep you guys updated on everything. I've talked to a lot of younger guys especially, because you see it online and it's like, oh yeah, man, I want to compete. Go ahead, man, do your thing. I'm not going to say don't, but just understand, bodybuilding is unforgiving, all right? I'm at a very, very amateur level, but I've met guys backstage, or I guess I should say, at the one show I did, but I've also met them in gyms, all this other stuff. You see some online, it's like, man, for every one Chris Bumstead, for every one, 19-year-old that gets their IFBB Pro card, or it gets sponsored by Gymshark, whatever, you guys gotta realize, man, for every single outlier on social media that you see, that's why they're an outlier. That's why you saw them. Because they stand out, and they surpassed everybody else. For every one Chris Bumstead, there are 10,000 dudes who did a few amateur shows, and especially if they jump on a lot of gear, they damage their health, they get major side effects, they start to hate the gym, they may even quit the gym altogether. Man, I've met women who used to compete, their voices totally shot, they sound like those old cigarette smoker ads. They have that saggy skin, but it's still kind of like covered in veins, like leftover remnant veins. They look like a lizard. I mean, the money aspect, man, these shows are not cheap. Just joining the federation that you choose to do is probably going to be at minimum $100, if not closer to $200. That's simply to join the federation. Then take into account each individual show that you want to sign up for is probably going to be another $150-ish or more dollars for one class. So for example, if you want to do open and classic physique, or classic physique and men's physique, whatever you want to do, the goofy smiley board shorts one, right? Every single one of those is an extra fee to do. And I've seen some guys, man, they do 2 divisions at every show they do. By the way, I did classic physique last time. I might do open bodybuilding this time. In terms of long-term, where I would fit best, I'd say definitely classic. I don't think I have the genetics to be a mass monster. I think that's pretty apparent. But I like the old school open bodybuilding style more. Just like the posing, it's not as like flowy and all that stuff, right? But comment below what you think I'd be better in. Maybe I'll do both. Maybe I'll do one at one show, one at the other. Or maybe both. But either way, it's not cheap, man. Especially too if you're traveling to these shows. If you have to travel remotely far and you get a hotel, even if you get like the promoter discount at the hotel you stay in or whatever, that's going to be a few extra $100. You got to pack all your meals. You got to pay for the tan. The women got to pay for the makeup and the hair. The women, man, they pay a lot of money too for their posing suits. Most dudes, you just buy it online. You're like, cool, man, that looks sweet. But these women, man, they get them all bedazzled, diamonds and stuff. Bro, they spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on these posing suits, man. Dude, this activity, bodybuilding, is just the definition of a money drain. And the thing is, there's no money to be made back from it. That's the craziest thing, man. This is such a pure passion project. Because even if you get to a huge level with a massive social media following, people will congratulate you online. It's like, oh, I won the show. Everyone's like, great job, you won the show. Nobody actually really cares. Besides the other competitors and people that are serious fans. There was a decently sized crowd, but there was a pro show after the amateur stuff, and there was a national qualifying set as well. But even so, man, you see a lot of these amateur shows, there's like 40 people in the crowd. 80% of those are family members who kind of got drugged there, or they're there just to be like, yay, yay. So I know you guys see these dudes online, a lot of the time they're gonna be fake natties too, right? And it's like, oh, I'm 21 and I got my pro card and the OCB or the WNBF. Even if you want to go the NPC IFBB route, man, this just destroys people's lives if they let it. That's the key thing. So if you want to go into this lifestyle, again, man, not just the general, oh, I eat protein and go to the gym and I go on the internet and say I'm a bodybuilder. Bunch of LARPers out here. But I'm talking seriously doing this. Be safe, guys, all right? Not even just in terms of PEDs, but I'm talking just mentally, all right? Like, you need to know what you're getting into, okay? You need to realize all that goes into it, all the money you're going to spend. the inevitable binge eating that is going to happen after the show because you've been starving yourself effectively for that long. Man, dude, I can't tell you how many women I've met and or seen online who have binge eating problems after their show, if they didn't already have them before they started competing. A lot of the times they go from one eating disorder to another. They go from being like bulimic, and then I found my power in bodybuilding. Then they do their first show, and then they binge eat after, then they go back to bulimia. I mean, dude, it's crazy out here, man. So don't get fooled by the glitz and glamour you see on social media. I mean, doing a show or two is cool for the sake of it, but if you want to go into this seriously, a lot of people can't handle it, and really they shouldn't, because you need to be a different breed to be able to be a bodybuilder long term. Just everything that goes into it, the obsessiveness, you have to be totally OCD, you have to be in such control of everything, you're going to scare people, you're going to bother people, you have to hold food everywhere that you go, practicing posing in the mirror constantly, going to the gym, time to go do cardio, time to get my steps in, all this other stuff, man. It's a lot. So just keep that in mind for those of you who are thinking about getting into this. Some of you who watch here, I'm sure, currently compete or you have competed. You know what I'm talking about. You can fall into the belly of this beast very quickly. And it only takes a few bad decisions, especially if you're a young person, like late teens, early 20s. Your brain's not even fully done developing yet. It only takes a few bad decisions to really mess yourself up, potentially long term. So just keep all those things in mind. But this has been it for me, guys. Thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for all of the coming updates. Get your program down below. Make more gains in less time in the gym. The templates I've used to get to the point that I am at. You can get in direct contact with me via Patreon, as well as joining our Discord server. Hundreds of members over there. Lots of channels to talk about different things. And use my codes down below to save some money on great products and services. And I will catch you guys next time.